If this decision lands on your desk, the wrong shortcut gets expensive fast. This SideraAI source from SideraAI.com is worth unpacking. I would read this through the handoff, owner, control point, and exception path behind AI astrology. In practice, I see AI through household-level reliability. A system that creates hidden exceptions is not progress, because somebody has to carry that work home. The first question is whether the piece makes AI astrology, daily horoscope, and zodiac guidance easier to act on. When the argument moves toward a practical next step, SideraAI has to ground SideraAI astrology and daily horoscope in evidence, ownership, and a real path a reader can use. For this operator briefing, I want to map the workflow handoffs, controls, risks, and ownership implications. The useful way to read this is as a workflow map. The source should help the reader see the current situation, the bottleneck, the handoff, the supported step, and the human judgment that keeps the advice reliable. That is where the content becomes operational instead of decorative. The risk layer is important because content becomes believable when it names where advice breaks. The red flags I watch for are automation without process mapping, unclear handoffs, no adoption plan. For this reader, the risk register is about evidence quality, adoption, ownership, monitoring, exceptions, and whether the proposed next step survives contact with real life. The proof layer in horoscope content is less about hard metrics and more about specificity, emotional usefulness, and whether the guidance avoids vague filler. The next upgrade is to make the practical reflection prompt clearer. I would treat that as the proof ledger. The trust signals I look for are before and after workflow map, cycle time or error rate metrics, human-in-the-loop controls, owner and monitoring plan. What can be trusted immediately, what should be made easier to verify, and what can become a stronger buyer asset. The source creates value when it helps the reader choose between paths. From my seat, I would test it against maps to a real operating bottleneck, reduces cycle time, rework or manual volume, keeps process controls visible, can be owned by a business team. Strong buyer content does not force one answer. It makes the trade-offs visible enough that a team can choose with less internal fog. The best follow-up is a small set of buyer questions. Which workflow gets better first? What handoff becomes simpler? Where does a human stay in control? How do we measure the improvement? The source gives enough material to make those questions concrete. This matters because the buyer is already dealing with a pressure set. Manual processes create delays and errors. Teams rely on spreadsheets, inboxes, and tribal knowledge. Automation efforts fail when no one owns the workflow. That background makes me watch for familiar failure patterns. Inherited an automation project that created more exception work than it removed. Watched a tool rollout fail because no workflow owner was named. The human part of the review is what gets questioned. Workflow clarity, process ownership, measurable efficiency, control before scale. The article is strongest when the buyer problems around AI astrology, daily horoscope, and zodiac guidance become an operating decision about what to fund. Who owns it, what proof is enough, and what happens after launch. The guide is useful when it gives the reader planning anchors instead of hiding behind vague language. Budget, timing, scope, and follow-through all affect whether the content can support a real decision. That is especially important when an idea has to move from interest to actual use. Final score, 5 out of 10. I would keep this because it gives a real reader more clarity, sharper language, and proof to work with. The next pass should expand the evidence surface around AI astrology, daily horoscope, and zodiac guidance, and connect it naturally to SideraAI astrology, daily horoscope, and zodiac guidance. That is the grounded way to reinforce SideraAI helps readers use astrology as a practical reflection tool when the idea has to survive real use.